Elbow room here.
We're live.
All right. Good late morning, everyone. It's a little after 11 o'clock. We are here for our only order of business today. We're going to finish up work around noon and let folks leave a little early in observation of the holiday weekend. So what we're going to do is hear from Commissioner Morrison and get an update on the Public Safety Communications Task Force, which has been an ongoing series of work within this committee's jurisdiction. And Commissioner, welcome. How are you? Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm happy to provide whatever update is useful for you. And I would say at the outset that I apologize. I have a hard stop at 11:40. I have to transition to another thing at 11:45. That's going to take me a couple minutes.
No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Want me to launch right in?
Yeah, please, please. No time like the present.
Okay, sir. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Morrison. I am the Commissioner of Public Safety and co-chair of the Vermont Public Safety Communications Task Force. As you probably know, the task force was formed in late June of 2023 with the passage of Act 78, or the Big Bill. Starting at section C-114 of the Big Bill on 140, page 140, there's a large scope of work that the task force is tasked with. And there is also a section that forms the task force that I am the co-chair of. So the task force has been meeting since shortly after the Big Bill passed, which was the last week of, we started meeting in the last week of June in 2023. I think we have updated this committee already about the, shall we say, the early times of procuring contractors, subject matter experts, and then project managers on behalf of the task force. And where would you like me to just jump to where we are right now, sir, or do you want me to continue to kind of pave the history?
I think a little bit of history would be good, just
Okay.
As a refresher, and we have some new members in the committee as well. So,
okay. So after a lengthy and not smooth procurement process, the task force hired a team from Televate, which is a company, a firm, that serves as the project manager or trusted advisor for the task force. The task force members are 7 people who were designated in statute and then selected by the organizations that they represent. Everybody has day jobs, and everybody on the task force has an area of this vast field of information that they are either expert in or very, very well read in, but nobody on the task force has the depth or breadth of industry expertise that is required for a project of this magnitude. So Televate was brought on as our trusted advisor and experts to serve the task force and to keep us going in the right direction, but also, for lack of any better description, to help us make sure we could keep our contracted firm doing the scope of work on task and going in the direction we want them, but also to be the checks and balances in terms of the technical expertise or areas that we're just not qualified to chime in on. So Televate has been an incredible partner for the task force. We also hired a company called Mission Critical Partners, and they are the system design experts. They are the ones who are conducting the most of the scope of work articulated in Act 78. They have visited all 37 dispatch centers that currently provide service inside Vermont. Not all of those are located in Vermont, but they have conducted the inventory as laid out in Act 78. They have conducted extensive surveying and interviewing and on-site observation of practices within dispatch centers and the 6 PSAPs that currently exist. They are the ones doing the scope of work, and they have created an inventory report. It is rather massive, and it has gone through 2 very, shall we say, detailed rounds of redaction so that we can release as much of it as possible to the general public. But of course, we can't release all of it to the general public. I am hopeful that that will be posted to our website. It might already be this morning, but as of last night, it was ready to go as far as I know. So there will be a 550-page inventory report that will be available to the public. There has been multiple drafts, a working draft, for lack of a better word, and then a first draft report created by Mission Critical Partners. We're going to call that the System Design Draft Report. That was released back in March, the beginning of March, first week of March. And it was intended to be put out there for public comment, for first responder community comment, for legislators comment, for anyone to comment on. So that report has been out there. We have held multiple listening sessions for the general public. We've held town hall sessions designed specifically for local officials and first responders who actually rely on the system, and dispatchers, and all the people who use the system on the daily. So there have been multiple feedback sessions. I skipped over the fact that before any pen went to paper and the process got very far down the road, Mission Critical Partners helped us host listening sessions for the general public and town halls for the first responder community and local officials about what they want to see out of a future system. What are the absolute must-haves? What are the can't have this, the roadblocks, the deal breakers? So there's been multiple iterations of public engagement prior to issuing any type of report, and now again following this first draft report. The public comment period has closed on that draft report, and Mission Critical Partners will be writing a final product for us, according to the terms of the contract we have with them. The task force has determined that we are going to hold another round of public engagement following the release of the final draft. Now, that does not mean that we're going to have Mission Critical Partners write another draft, because that would be out of scope of the contract. But we feel it's important because we expect some pretty substantial changes from this first draft to the final draft. We feel it's pretty important for everybody to be able to weigh in on what they think the priorities should be from this final draft report as the task force considers priorities and recommendations. So we anticipate receiving a final draft report in early May. I'm not sure exactly the date. And then the task force would obviously need time to review that as we get to work to, I believe the process we're going to take is to take it section by section. I don't know if any of you have seen the draft report. It's pretty meaty.
We have it posted on our page today. Yeah.
It's pretty meaty and in some areas pretty technical, but we want to take time to go through each section of the report so that the task force can determine initially within sections what are the priorities or the most likely improvements that we would recommend, and bring in people who might have expertise in those areas to talk to the task force as we are formulating those priorities and those recommendations. And then at the end of this review, we will take all of the priorities or recommendations from all the sections, and then we will retriage again. Like, what are the top line things that we think could move the state forward as contemplated in Act 78. And I do want to say that we're trying very hard to follow the roadmap that has been laid out in Act 78. It is an enormous and vast scope of work. And at some point we may need to discuss, as we hone in on priorities, narrowing the field a little bit. But that's where we stand. The work is slow. It's methodical, but it's intentionally so. And up to this point, the task force has very purposefully remained Switzerland, so to speak. We have not come out with any preconceived notion of where we think this should go or what the end product should look like. We have stayed completely agnostic in any of the discussions that have come up about opening PSAPs that have been closed or closing PSAPs that exist or closing down X, Y, and Z dispatch center and consolidating them. We're not making recommendations or putting any personal imprimaturs on any of the work to date. Obviously, that's going to change as this final draft hits. We're going to have to start making decisions as a group and stating preferences. So that's where we are.
No, I mean, I'm really happy you said that. I had several members and people in the building ask me about dispatch centers being closed and things of that nature. And I told them that I had not heard anything of that nature, that we were just in the process right now of going through getting an update from you of where we are at. It's like just a status update with the project, and then getting like a firmer understanding of like how it's going to evolve over the next months and a little further. So I appreciate that formal clarification on the record.
Yes. So we have made no recommendations or even had any discussions about whether or not consolidation and moving ahead with recommendations in that space makes sense. So like, just to give you a sense of the volume and scope of this work, like the one topic of operations, which includes everything from, do we require all dispatchers to be certified in some way? Because currently they are not, only 911 call takers are. And building a certification system and a required training system is a big undertaking. That's just one piece of contemplating ideas within the operations system. What about consistent guidelines and policies for how the dispatching function is done from center to center? That would be a whole nother area of a large lift, so to speak. But then if you get into within the operations scope, are we going to seek to explore what the other options are on the street for a computer-aided dispatch system that might better meet the needs of fire and EMS? Just that one topic alone will burn through so much emotion and time, and it will become a massive project to tackle because of the passion and care that exists in the first responder community for that type of tool to be the right thing for not just law enforcement, but fire and EMS. So that's just within one section of this report. I've laid out for you 3 things that could come as recommendations that will each take an extreme amount of resources and money and time.
How is, speaking of money, there's been a lot of conversations about the dollars allocated and appropriated to this project. How is the is the funding adequate? Are you?
Sure. So in Act 78, there was a total of $11 million of state funding designated to this project. There was up to $2 million made available for the use of doing the scope of work in Act 78, which was primarily through contracted subject matter experts. And I'm prepared to give you a breakdown of where we are right now on that. There was another $4.5 million put in, I don't know, I guess the Joint Fiscal Committee has it. I don't have the language of the act in front of me, but $4.5 million set aside in case the task force wanted to pursue pilot projects. And then another $4.5 million for eventual moving forward with whatever's next. So a total of $11 million in general funds was earmarked for this project back in June of 2023. So that being said, to date, and this total is up to date as of this week, we have spent $879,000, and that breaks down as $5,400 in per diem payments to task force members, as authorized in the bill. Mission critical partners, who are the ones doing, of course, the system design, the work, the big volume of work. They to date have been paid just under $630,000. The total contract amount is somewhere in the low 800,000. So I suspect that with the delivery of a final final draft and all the other completion of their work, that will roll up in the next few months. Televate, who is our project manager and trusted advisors, have been paid $230,000, $465 to date. And then we've had just north of $14,000 in other expenses, which has been for advertising in Front Porch Forum and the use of interpreters at our town hall and listening sessions, language access.
Okay, so that 14K is for like the community outreach purposes, et cetera, et cetera.
Community engagement, yes. So that's a total of $879,668.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know this is a very arduous and detailed process, so I'm definitely.
I think it's bigger than anyone really actually thought, because I just gave you a flavor of how much bandwidth could be exhausted on working on just the operational piece of this. That says nothing about, do we consolidate to fewer centers? If so, which ones? How do we mandate it, or do we look for willing partners? How do we share technologies if we're smashing existing centers together, right? Who owns what? Who gets paid what? Let's back it up a step. If we do nothing, how do we fix the inequity in the system that currently exists, where some agencies are paying nothing to be dispatched by the state police, and others are paying disparate amounts based on who they get their service from, whether that's Keene, New Hampshire, or St. Albans, or Shelburne, or Lamoille County. So, even just trying to level the existing playing field is a big task. But if you then start reshaping things financially, there's a really big piece of this puzzle. Governance is a huge nut that we have to shape soon. As soon as we figure out what the likely steps are, if they implicate the need for statewide governance, that's probably got to come into place real early. But then park all of that sort of operational and administrative stuff aside, you've still got a huge technology landscape.
Yeah.
There is a potentially massive amount of money that could be expended to expand the existing land mobile radio network in order to provide better service in some of these dead zones where there is no land mobile radio connectivity or cell phone connectivity. And that doesn't even address the question of, should ubiquitous cell phone service be part of this communications stratosphere? Like, should we even be talking about infill with cell service in areas where first responders know that there isn't any? Or are we only staying in the land mobile radio lane? But either way, they're both really expensive propositions. I just want to put that out there. But if you put them both together, it's a really big deal. So I just want to put out there that this is something that cannot be rushed into, and we can't rush towards a preordained outcome because of the complexity of all the different segments and the sequencing of those segments is super important.
No, I appreciate a good order of operations. You can't get over your skis without knowing how to put the boots on first, right? For lack of a better analogy. At this point, does anybody at the table have any questions for the commissioner? Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about this over time. And so based on my chicken scratch here, Commissioner, it sounds like the next phase for the reports early May with some refinement coming after that.
I think unless we were to do a contract amendment with Mission Critical Partners, I think that what we get from them in May is what we get from them. Now, that doesn't mean that the task force can't say, yep, this is what we got, but here's more information that needs to be considered, or, we disagree with that recommendation. We don't see it that way. But I don't think engaging in a constant revision process based on input is ever going to get us to a finish line. But it will be, at the time it is delivered, by far the furthest we have gotten in this state down the garden path of moving forward with some improvements and some sort of consistency statewide. So I do think this is a bit of a sentinel event. I know that the concept of regional dispatching has been tried in many areas, but it has also been discussed as far back as, I believe it's 1967 was the first newspaper article that came out about regionalizing emergency communications. So this will represent a large step forward in putting it all on the table and showing the interrelatedness and complexity of it, and then being able to identify what the priorities are, and what the art of the possible is based on funding.
I appreciate that. Representative Hooper.
Again, you're over here, but the camera's over here.
Hi, Bob.
In these discussions, are we keeping old school, or are we also looking at new tech that might be rolling down? When you talk about the dark spots in the state, is SAT something is available or being discussed, or?
Yes. So all of the current technologies, including low orbit satellites, are possibilities, and they are all, a diversified portfolio of how we communicate is definitely part of building the resilience that Act 78 asks for. So those are all being explored. And when we get to that part of the report, we will obviously need to lean on people with much greater knowledge of that space than what the task force members have. So that's why sort of taking the report section by section seems to me to make sense, to bring the right other people, stakeholders from Vermont, people with industry expertise, people who actually do the job, whether that's operations or in the technical world. But yes, there's definitely a lot of modalities being looked at for how we put together this communication system.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you were touching on something that was bouncing around in my head, right? It was like with the technology evolving so quickly, like a lot of the other things that we're dealing with here in government, it moves so fast. Like, it's kind of a similar overlay. We're looking at in a bill about like deepfakes and AI generated content that's meant to be deceiving, right? And sometimes it's like the technology feels like it moves faster than the policy can. So I guess that's kind of like an open-ended question, right? Like you're like looking at that arc of how the technology jumps or setting up within these new systems, the ability to like maybe move a little brisker with staying updated with the new tech as it rolls in.
Yes, and that's what you're speaking of is exactly why we have Televate on our team, because they are industry experts and they have worked all across the country in projects of entire statewide rollouts of LMR networks, of other of new dispatching configurations. So the technology does evolve quickly, and we have to take that into account in terms of not just resiliency, but in terms of budgeting. And as I said, really wanting to make sure that what we build is not good for yesteryear, but that it's as good as we possibly can make it for the next 10 years, the next 15 years, whatever the technology implicates.
Anything else for the commissioner? I'm looking at my notes. I think I touched on the pieces that I wanted to speak to. Mr. First Responder?
I was just gonna say, have a great weekend.
You know what? I hope you have a great weekend. I'm really
say that.
Really appreciative of that question, sir.
Gonna make time waiting.
So maybe what we'll think about doing is, I mean, if you're getting the finalized report in May, maybe we can just touch back with you once you're comfortable coming in and discussing that final product with us, knowing that we'll still be hanging out here.
Yes, I hope that you're out as you normally are by Mother's Day. I think that's a nice gift for all the mothers in the body.
Mhm.
And and for all of us. I don't know, that was a subtle way of saying, yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
We would be happy to come back whenever it pleases you. We can also provide, we're going to have Mission Critical provide a bit of a more fulsome executive summary on the top, so that for people who can't read all those pages, that they might glean some info from that. But we can obviously provide whatever roll up you need in writing if we're not able to coordinate another visit.
So I guess once you have that and the executive summary that they provide, if you could just forward that to the committee, that would be awesome. We'll just start there.
Be happy to.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Have a great
All right.
weekend.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Take care.
All right, Autumn.